Hi everyone, Nigel Saunders here. Big changes in the weather today. At the present moment, it's 11 degrees Celsius, and tonight by 10 o'clock, it will drop down to minus 7 degrees Celsius. So big changes. It's very windy outside, kind of rainy. Today, I'm going to be repotting my Japanese black pine. Here's a look at my black pine. This tree was last repotted in April of 2021, so it's been 3 years in this pot. And the tree's grown a lot since I first repotted it. Let's go back in time and have a look at that first repot of the tree. I've got a Japanese black pine seedling here that Michael gave me. Yeah, Michael gave me this black pine seedling. He gave me two of them, but one didn't survive the first winter. But this one did. This is doing really well. So I'm going to put it in a better pot, get some fresh soil in here, and continue to grow it. So I think I will put it in the last of Tom's pots here. That'll be kind of exciting. So I'm going to pull it out of the pot. Here I go. Maybe I'll pull the pot out of the tree. Wow. Well, it looks like it was growing in lava rock. Some roots that have gone through the drainage holes and air pruned. Break that up a bit. Tease out these roots. Yeah, so I can kind of arrange those, kind of flatten radial and plant it. So I'll get a base layer of soil in the pot. I'm actually going to use this lava stone, won't fall through these holes, so I'll put that down at the bottom. And that'll be a good kind of base drainage layer. So I may have to do a little root pruning here. They're a little long, so I'll just remove some of the roots. I think about like that, not too severe. And then I'll arrange them in the pot. Try and get them kind of radial. Like that. I think that'll do. And then I'll fill it in with soil. I've kind of been treating it as more of a temperate tree. They can't really take the severe cold. They're kind of like a Japanese maple. They don't like it much colder than about minus 5 to minus 10 degrees Celsius. Okay, so that can go on the bench now. We are back to present day time now, so it's time to repot this tree once again. Before I start the repotting process, I'll show you some gifts that I got in the mail from Barb from Michigan. Barb has sent us gifts, both for my wife and for me. For my wife, she sent some freeze-dried mealworms. So those are for the chickens and the ducks. They just absolutely love these things. It's like their best treat ever. So that's for my wife. And then for me, I have a pair of parrot scissors. These are small nail trimming scissors, I believe. I'll show you those when I open them up. And a pair of tweezers, very small tweezers. They're selected professional tool, anti-magnetic, anti-acid, and non-corrosive stainless steel. So those will be really nice for working on the small trees. These scissors are very sharp. They come with a little plastic cover. And they're very fine for working on little tiny trees. So those will be awesome. And the tweezers are awesome too. So thanks very much, Barb. Barb from Michigan has visited the Bonsai Zone, and she attended one of the workshops I did at Tropical Expressions. So it's nice to hear from Barb once again. So my first step with the Japanese black pine is to get the tree out of the pot. All right, here I go. Let's see if it just pops out. It should. It's almost out by itself, so. Wow, those roots are really, they've grown into these drainage holes that are built into this pot, this plastic training pot. So there it is out of the pot. You can see there's lots and lots of roots.
especially on the bottom here. There's just a huge mat of roots. Oh my goodness. Yeah. So I think I won't be using these roots on the bottom, so I'm going to start by cutting all those roots off. That bird's nest of roots. So there I go. You can see how they just wrapped round and round the pot over the last 3 years. So that can be put on the compost heap. I'll begin raking out the soil from the roots now, and we'll see what kind of a root system this tree has grown. So this tree should have been repotted last year. 3 years was leaving it a little too long, but I don't know. It was probably one of those trees I just never got to. So this year, it gets its repotting. And that should help the health of the tree and should let the tree grow with a lot more vigor this year. So you can see here, the root system is quite one-sided, that there's no roots growing in this area. But, you know, you just keep working with what you get. Still quite a mat of roots on the bottom here. There's my centipede. There's a few bugs in the root system. They're not harmful ones though. I'm going to move the centipedes outside. Every time I go outside it feels colder and colder. Yeah, so some good roots on this side of the tree. Just nothing on this side. This would be a good tree for a root over rock. There's nothing underneath the tree. That could be a potential plan for the future. I thought the wisteria had wild roots. This black pine also has some pretty wild looking roots. Okay, I think the tree's bare rooted now. So I'll clean up and we'll begin the root pruning. I'll just wet the root system down before I begin the root pruning. Make sure they're not going to dry out like that. So here's the root system on the tree. And as I said, it would be really good for a root over rock, but that wasn't really my intention for this tree. I just wanted to grow it into a normal looking pine. I didn't want it to be, you know, a root over rock or anything. So I think I'm still going to go with that strategy, just trying to grow a regular looking pine tree. If I were to grow this as a root over rock, I would keep a lot of these long roots and have them go down into the soil underneath the rock. But if I grow it into a normal pine, I'll want to prune those off and generate a root system that's a little closer to the trunk, so it's not so spreading. It is kind of one-sided. There's not a lot of roots coming from here, but that could change in the future. I mean, they will generate roots. So I'm going to begin the pruning. I'm going to prune off some of these long roots sticking straight down, getting kind of a flat root base on the bottom. So the roots are still dormant on the tree, so I haven't missed my repotting window. If anything, you know, I'm maybe a little early with the tree, but I'd rather get it done. I've repotted pines quite early before and they seem to do quite well. So the root base is reduced a bit. Now there's a lot of roots that go very funny directions, which you can't be too aggressive with your pruning of the roots on a pine. However, you can do work. You've just got to be a little more careful. It's not like a maple or an elm or anything where, you know, you can cut them back quite far and they'll generate new roots. You have to be a little more cautious on your coniferous trees. This one's going a funny direction. This one too. Just trying to keep my best radial roots. There's a root that curls around underneath the tree. It's going back underneath the tree. So are these. So it's getting better, the root system. It's getting a little flatter. So let me clean up and we'll start the detailed root pruning. I have a root here that's coming down and then it kind of goes funny, it curls around. So a bit of a risky cut. I'm going to prune it off right here, removing that bit of the root system. I've got another root here that kind of, it doesn't flow down, it sticks up, so I'm going to remove that root. There's a root here sticking up. I'm going to get rid of that one. This root's getting a little long. I'm going to trim it back. Now, on this root, it looks good until about here. I've got some roots that are sort of intertwined. I'm going to take off this part of it. This root here, it kind of goes down and then it takes a funny turn. It must have hit the bottom of the pot. I'm going to do quite a risky root prune on it, taking the end off. This root here is doing some funny stuff at the end. It's getting sort of like a pom-pom root where I've cut a root and then it's generated all kinds of new roots at the cut point. So ideally you want your roots dividing from 1 to 2. So that's a little closer to that now. There's a root here that wraps around underneath. I'm going to remove that one. Like that. There's a root here that goes down and goes underneath this other root. I'm going to prune this part of it back. There's a root curling back inside underneath the tree here. I'll prune that away. And again, I have quite a pom-pom of root. Oop, there's a grub there. I have quite a pom-pom of roots here. I have a fairly good root coming out the bottom here, so I could prune the top off here, so I will. Like that. Keeping that root that's underneath. This root here kind of crosses this other root. I think that'll be a problem in the future, so I'm going to remove it. And the rest aren't too bad. I think I've left enough on that the tree will survive. Yeah. So I think that's it for the root pruning. Just prune off some of these longer ones and get the tree planted. I think that's as much as I can do this year on the root system. So next, I have to find a pot. You can see the original pot. It would fit in there, but it's a little on the small side. I would rather something just a little bit bigger if possible. So I'll see if I can find a slightly bigger pot. If not, I mean, I could plant it in here. It would do quite fine. So I'll see what I have. Outside here, it is getting very, very cold. It's windy, cold, and gloomy today. I found this Chinese pot. I think that's good. It's quite shallow. It's got lots of room for the roots to grow. Yeah, I think that'll be a good pot for this tree. So I'll get some drainage screens in the pot, get a base layer of soil, and plant the tree. And I'll take this grub and feed that to the chickens. I've got my drainage screens in the pot, so I'll add a base layer of soil now. And I have to plant the tree, so this will be the front with the nicest root base. And the tree has a bit of a slant, so I'll push it over to the left-hand side a bit. Not too much. But I think somewhere about there looks pretty good. Let's just have a look from the front. There's a look at the tree in the pot. I could probably go a little more towards the center. Maybe about there. Yeah, I think that looks good. All right, I'll fill in the pot with the soil now. Okay, make sure my tree is vertical. Then I'll make sure the soil's worked into the roots so there's no air pockets. There's lots of space between the roots, so I don't think it'll be a problem. Tamp my soil down. Okay, that is looking good. It is time to water the tree. All right, here I go with the water. Here is a look at my pine now. I'll rotate it around so you can see it from all angles. So here's the front, coming around to the right-hand side, the back, the left-hand side, and back to the front.
It's time now for today's updates. Today's updates will be some of the trees I've repotted recently. So here's the 2 larch. You can see the green on the trees is coming out quite nicely. So far anyway. Beside that is my Japanese graybark elm, and it's starting to push the foliage out on it. Over here I have my crimson hawthorn. The leaves are continuing to come out. It's still looking good so far. Beside that I have my trident maple. It's pushing out all kinds of new growth. Looking good. Behind that is the mulberry tree. The leaves are just starting to come out on it, showing lots of green. My Korean maple down here, the leaves are just about out on it. They're just starting to push now. The little spruce is still looking good. Down here is my dawn redwood. It continues to push green from the buds. The yew tree is still looking good. My catalpa, the buds are still swelling on it. No leaves yet, but it's still looking good. There's the wisteria I repotted yesterday. Over here is my Arakawa Japanese maple. The buds are continuing to swell and they're starting to show just a little bit of leaf on them. My rose of Sharon here, the leaves are starting to come out. You can see a bit of green on the buds now. My birch tree here is starting to leaf out. I haven't repotted that one. It's good for this year.
My apple tree, the buds are just starting to come out now. You can see there's some green growth. The leaves are just starting to show. And I debated on repotting this tree, the apple tree. It still drains really well. It's not lifting out of the pot. And I was going to change the front of the tree, and then I decided I'm still liking the current front, so I may not repot that this year. I might wait until it gets hard to water, till the pot fills with roots. I think it still drains really well when I water it, so I don't think it needs repotting. The first tree that leafed out this year was my Amur maple, and you can see it back here. It's in full leaf. That will need pruning probably in the next few weeks. It's growing so well. Yeah, so everything. Oh, and there's my my silk tree back here is still starting to leaf out. So that's a good sign also. So it doesn't mean the trees have survived the repotting. I mean, even if you cut all the roots off and just stuck, the trunk in the soil, generally they will still leaf out. You find out if they survive when they start putting on, good growth. When the leaves start extending and the branches start growing, that's when you know it's survived the repotting. So it's still too early to tell. My silver maples over here are leafing out. You can see the leaves on them here. The oaks up here, the English oaks or royal oaks, the buds are still swelling on them, so they're still looking good so far. No activity much on the sugar maples, but the buds are really swelling up on them. So they should be popping out with leaves soon. I'm not going to repot the silver maples. I think they're fine in this big nursery tray. I'll let them grow for another year, prune them, grow them. The elm over here, I forgot about the elm. It's still looking good. The buds are swelling at the tips. So far that's looking good also. It's starting to rain outside. I'm sure that'll turn to snow later on today. So that's it for the updates. So far everything's looking good, but again, it's too early to tell. I won't know until maybe a month from now if everything survived the repotting. I definitely left this tree too long in between repottings. I should have repotted it probably every year to get a nice fine radial root system on it. Some of those roots were quite long and they reached the bottom of the pot and started circling around. So all my fine roots were in the bottom that I cut off. Some of these root cuts they're getting a little risky. I was cutting into some fairly thick roots, but I do have confidence the tree will survive and grow and do quite well this summer. Time will tell. So that is all for today. I'm Nigel Saunders. Thanks for joining me in the Bonsai Zone.